What's up, guys? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Today, I'm joined with my partner in crime, Stop the FOMO. FOMO. Today's session is on Sony. Now, we haven't
Yes.
discussed, or we have discussed some of these leaks from, I guess it's from China, however they were leaked.
They're all from China. I
They're
have
all
yet
from
to see a
China.
leak from Kazakhstan.
Yeah, yeah. So we haven't. We talked about them in various live streams and within
Hmm.
our communities, but you and I have never really addressed them. So I think what we'll do today is talk a little bit about some of the speculation, some of it that we think is accurate, but also how we thought Sony fared in 2024, their strategy now in 2025, and I think
Hmm.
kind of what we think or hope they will do. And this is where, when the community watches these tech therapy videos, they are therapy for us and for you. I'd love to have you guys in the comments talk about what you want Sony to do or where you think they're lacking or where you think they're strong. If you're a big fan, let it out in this video. FOMO, let's talk about Sony. What are your thoughts on where they are, what we've heard? I know you're going to bring up, the actual, I have a copy of it here, the leaks. A lot of you guys, I have the paper copy.
The
um,
paper copy.
so, FOMO, before we start with that, let's set the table. Sony in the last number of years has not gone to CES. We thought, I can't remember what year, maybe 3, 4 years ago, they skipped it. And there's a lot
Hmm.
of speculation. They were afraid. They didn't want to. That's ridiculous. They want their own time to shine. A lot of these manufacturers are very much about noise. And I think they've done amazing by releasing later in the year FOMO. I think it's hurt them in some ways, but they're very secret about what's happening. I want to do this video before we actually know anything.
Yeah.
So whether it's
Yeah, we know
NDAs,
nothing, by the
we
way.
know,
So it's not
yeah.
like we're
So
under NDA. We're there is no detail to be NDA'd about.
yes, but there will be a period of time where we will know, and then these videos aren't very fun. Live streams are less fun when we do know things. So I figured organically, FOMO and I talk every day about this. But FOMO, the strategy of them being late to the party, do you like that? Do you think they should be sooner? Do you think it's working for them? Let's talk about that quickly before we speculate. What do you think of their strategy about being last, giving them the spotlight?
Hmm.
But do you think it hurts them or really helps them?
So I think we have to place context. If you think about the year as not being starts in January, end in December, but just imagine it's a continuous spectrum. So you're never last. You could say that Sony was first. Let's say Sony releases something in October. You could say, well, Sony released their 2026 TVs before anyone else.
It's
So it's a
true.
spectrum, right? I mean, the fact that we
Yeah.
say first or last, we're using CES as the beginning. There is no beginning or end. And that's the genius. Sony's like, look, we're going to sell the TVs on our time. And that means we don't want to sell the TVs when everyone's flooding the market and we have to compete with all that attention.
Yep.
We'll let the excitement die down as long as what they release is competitive. And it was genius last year because the Bravia 9, very competitive. I mean, everyone who has reviewed TVs, myself included, it was the best mini LED TV that we saw last year, with Samsung's Q95D a close second, but it was just not quite there. And so Sony was able to say, look, we hit it a few months later, but you know what? It was worth the wait.
Yep.
And it was the same with the A95L when it launched 2 years ago, winning the shootout 2 years in a row. So as far as Sony is concerned, there is no late or early as long as they release it or release a product that is competitive with what came before it. Now, if it releases a product that's obsolete, now you could say it's late, but
Yep.
it's late in the context of what was released before it.
Yeah, and love that thinking is, I'm sure, what they're thinking. But FOMO, the noise, right? So you and I have been at CES together the last 3 years. You were
Mhm.
there before me. But when we are going through these different booths and these different behind the scenes, and we're really doing our content while we're at CES, we do live streams when we're there. For us, it's almost a relief that there's less there because
Mhm.
it's not just more work for us, which I don't mind. We love it, but they would get lost in the noise. The
Yes.
wow of this and the wow of that gets beat up by the wow of that. And next thing you know it, the first one you see is the last one you might talk about. So they're very smart. But with the Bravia 9, they had that cut screen demo that many of you had seen in our videos.
Hey,
That was genius.
Brian, I want to pause at CES when you said lost in the noise.
Yeah.
You know what's ironic? You know who got lost in the noise, even though we loved their display? Samsung.
Yeah.
Did we have anything good to say about Samsung? Let's see. The matte screen came back. The RGB micro LED is vaporware until we have a
Yeah.
launch date of maybe late 2025, 2026. The only TV that we got excited about was the RGB micro LED, but it's a
Yeah.
98-inch TV. There is no confirmation it comes to 85,
Yeah.
whereas at Hisense, we're going to sell this TV, but it's 116 inches. You're excited if you have 25,000 or whatever, 18,000 in your pocket, whatever that price ends up being. So ultimately, all the TVs that came at CES, not to say you shouldn't show up at CES
Yeah.
brands, I I don't know that there was excitement to the degree that Sony is missing out. I mean, what did you think? Let's just talk about that. The TVs
Yeah.
that were there, I mean, and you were totally disappointed with how LG presented the G5.
So
You're like,
yeah.
what the hell is this?
So for me, and those of you that obviously follow us both, when I had seen LGs, and look, first of all, we love everybody at these companies. I was underwhelmed because there was very little information. It wasn't until Panasonic said what it was that we were like, "Oh, that's great." So I was pretty bummed out. The very first, I mean, that was our first showing was LG, and then Samsung definitely lifted my spirits. But the reason why Samsung I thought dominated CES was pure showmanship.
Yes.
It was more about how much they showed. Now, as you're saying, they don't put any part numbers on much many things,
I
but
mean, you were crying the day after with the 83-inch QD OLED, QD
I wasn't
OLED.
crying, man. I was
So, so,
heartbroken.
so you're like, you're excited at the event and at the live streams.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
We have to call the emergency room to carry you out of the
I was in
cafe.
such denial. I'm like, shut up. I know. I know it's not possible. But to your point, we're going through and it's a long process and we're doing our
Hmm.
videos. And then we have to think about what we're going to do when we get home. Like, what videos are we going to prioritize? They know that let's wait. But you know what?
Yeah.
Sony is there. They're in
Hmm.
constant contact. And I will say about Sony, Sony's the one company, well, maybe the only company that when we meet with them and see them, we have many friends there. They want to know what you guys think.
Hmm.
Very little bit of is what, hey, FOMO, what do you think? Brian, what do you think? It's what are your community members saying? So they're very much about that. This gives them, in my opinion, more time to process which way to go. Um, I think it's a genius move to wait. But as we've seen with companies like TCL, we already have a TV that we've already saturated that's here from TCL. That lead time of waiting might be too long, FOMO, because we have review dates and things coming up. We know nothing about what Sony's releasing. There's not a part number, so they're very secretive, which is why these leaks kind of suck. Actually, I'd love to be surprised. I love their strategy, but I think in the end, FOMO, sometimes to your point, that the A95L is a great example. A95K before it, it gets to obsolescence a little faster,
Well,
especially
you know
with
what?
QD.
Okay, so enthusiasts. We're talking enthusiasts. We're not talking the common consumer who shows up at Best Buy and doesn't know the difference between an OLED,
That's a
a
good point too.
QLED, and QD, right? So among enthusiasts, I can guarantee you they're still waiting for Sony. They're not going to pull the trigger until, I mean, they have to wait, what, a few more weeks, maybe another month or two.
Yep.
You couldn't buy an LG G5 right now anyway. The minute the G5 releases, or the month it releases, it is likely Sony will have official leaks from Sony itself what to expect. And that gets people to go, okay, you know what? I could wait another month to hear
Yeah.
the specs. And I
Yeah. Yeah.
think that works, right?
Well, and FOMO too, actually, you mentioned that. I was in one of the best Best Buys in my state. Shout out to Jackie from Sony. Um, and you know what's funny is a lot of the TVs now stop doing the sticker that says 2025. You get that when you bring the TV home. At least I see that at Value Electronics. You're right. When you're actually at the store, the common person is going for which one looks best there.
Hmm.
That has the best Sony pad that
Wait,
I've
and
seen.
they're all in vivid mode. So as far
Yeah,
as I'm
yeah, yeah,
concerned,
yeah.
they're indistinguishable in vivid mode.
Yeah, but see that Best Buy is great because it had comparisons with the X90L. It had all the
Hmm.
models, last year's models
Hmm.
and everything. But that store showed, but the common person's like, I'll get this, whatever it is right now. But you're right, the
Right.
enthusiast, what I think Sony does that's genius, that fear of missing out is strong. Why am I going to buy a G5 if maybe Sony's doing an RGB tandem OLED? I want their version of it.
Uh-huh.
And FOMO, what's so interesting about, people say, well, vertical integration, Sony's using this panel, that panel. Well, the secret sauce, the processing, the chassis, all those things mean a lot. And Sony's still the best in the business in so many ways that, if you're going to buy a G5, but they have something similar, you're going to wait for that, aren't you, Paul?
I would. Uh, I think people who bought Sony OLED TVs, whether it's the A90J, A95L, A95K, every one of them have been happy with their purchase because their expectations have been, I'm buying the best movie to watch movies. There's no disappointment there. It is the gamers who are perpetually, I don't want to call it pixel peeping, but it's more like frame peeping,
Yeah, yeah,
motion, features,
yeah.
HEIG, and that's completely appropriate. But
Yep.
that's not Sony's market. I mean, what was Sony's theme last year? Bringing cinema home or something like that?
Yeah, it's
It's
bring
not
something home.
bringing gaming home. I mean, it's got gaming features, but it's bringing
Yeah.
cinema home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And because they know their audience, and those people, happy as can be. And they know that they don't need the latest bright this, that, the other. As long as the skin looks natural, they're happy. And I think
Yeah.
it's not a large audience, but it's a loyal one because they know what they're getting from Sony.
Yeah, and that's gonna be our next, therapy session is brand loyalty. Because literally in my studio now, there's an A80L behind me. This is my actual TV, one that I own. At home, I have an A80J, and I have a C1. The C1 is, to your exact point, my gaming TV. That'll be replaced by the
Hmm.
G5 this year. So even for me, I know what I'm buying being a gamer.
Hmm.
So I'm going right for that. But, so I think we should speculate a bit, or we should probably
Yes,
bring
let's
up
do
bring
it.
up
Let's do it.
your sheet, if
Okay,
you wanna put it
let
there, I'll
me
add it.
bring it up right now. We have a couple of we have two major leaks that I want to share with you guys. We'll start with a softball leak. And again, these are leaks. It's not confirmed, and they're leaks for 2025. So this is what people in China are saying will happen, but two things to keep in mind. The people in China may have different TVs. So this could be true in China, or it could be completely false and no one's getting this TV. Just keep in mind, right? So High Def, our friend, posts news out of China. I'm convinced he lives there now. And so he's saying a
Yeah,
prominent Chinese TV reviewer is predicting that Sony will be using TCL's WHVA and HVA panels on their top mini LED this year.
yeah,
So a little context. If you guys watched Caleb's recent TV review of the QM6K, loves it as we all do, but
ours.
he said something interesting. He said well, he was asking TCL about, oh, is this the new HVA? TCL said, we've always had HVA. And Clip's like, yeah, but last year was kind of crappy. Off angle is terrible. So I'm thinking, yeah, what, this is a better generation HVA? But TCL was not focused on that at all. There was no talking points about wide angle, how the
Yep,
HVA is improved, but it's clear to us it's better. Like the
yeah, yeah,
Bravia, not the Bravia, the QM8 was unwatchable beyond 15 degrees. You saw how
yep,
desaturated it was at M Wave, right? I mean,
yep,
it's clear they did not have an HVA panel. Okay, so the QM6K has the HVA, and this is what excites me. We know for a fact, and TCL has told us, all their TVs this year will only have the HVA panel. The WHVA, or the step up, sometimes I think they may also call it the HVA Pro. It's a step up HVA panel. They're saying it may come next year, but they don't expect it on any of their TVs this year, from the QM6 all the way up to the QM8K. However, we've seen some confirmation that Samsung, the 8K, will have the WHVA, and now we have this leak that Sony will be coming out with a TV that
yeah,
has the WHVA. And what was the biggest weakness of the Bravia 7, Brian, for you and I?
yeah, viewing angle.
Oh yeah, I saw your video, of course, right? The moving angle is
Yeah, yeah,
obvious.
yeah, yeah,
And now Sony is not that far behind. The minute the TV technology is out, they're implementing it for that model year, the same time
Yeah.
everyone else is. So
Yep.
assuming this is true, again, I'm excited because of WHVA. It will be the only 4K TV with WHVA because if you want that WHVA, which is even better color saturation off angle on a Samsung, you have to pay extra for the 8K. So you
Yeah.
got the 8K on the Samsung and you got the 4K flagship on the Sony. This is an exciting leak.
Yeah.
Brian, will
So
you get
so
this TV?
right now all I'm seeing is the top of high defs thing. Is you have the other one that shows the whole thing? Because on
Uh,
screen all I see is
oh,
the bottom.
yeah. Let me, I'll have to cut that. Okay, let me cut that one real quick.
So while you're talking
So,
about that, yeah, what we love about what Sony, and I think some of you guys don't love that, is they can literally on the fly pick and choose. Do you want me to remove that FOMO first?
yeah, you can take that out. Yeah. I mean,
So they will literally pick and choose what technology they want to use, whether it was WOLED for years with the A80L, the A90J, and then grabbing a QD OLED with the A95K, A95L. They can literally choose what technology best suits them without having to invest FOMO into the research and the R&D. So
hmm
to me, like taking QD OLEDs, I thought that the A95K and A95L looked very different than the S95B, C, and D. They were totally different. Their signatures are completely different. We've compared them all ourselves. So I love that they can pick and choose what they want. These leaks are very interesting because some of them make sense. Others do not make sense, as we have things like a Bravia 9 for 77 inches, which is an OLED size, not an LED size. Then we have Bravia 8s here with 85 inches, which we know is an LED size and not an OLED size FOMO. So I think that's interesting. Um, and before you put that on screen, they're looking at a Bravia 2, a Bravia 6, a Bravia 7, Bravia 8, Bravia 9, Bravia 10. So Bravia 9 Mark II is what they're calling it. That they're saying it's Mark II.
let me bring it up right now so you can see. Yeah, this one's weird because they're actually giving model numbers, but the model numbers kind of don't make sense to me. But let me share this with you real quick now.
Yeah, that's the one that I think I have here.
Okay, there we go.
And for high def, a little mad at him because he's the one that told me there was an 83-inch QD OLED.
Well,
I was
that's
like,
why, you got to take these things with a grain of salt.
a grain of salt.
So, all right, so let's look at this. Everyone is interested in the Bravia 10. So first of all, we're assuming it's called the Bravia 10. In China, it'll be called the XR100, right? Bravia 10 appears to be a USA nomenclature, but
Yep.
assuming there's an XR100 or a Bravia 10, it comes in two sizes, and this is the mini LED, full array local dimming, and so it's a larger size. So what did we say last year? If only the Bravia 9 came in a 100-inch size,
100 inch. Yep.
that's it. But what's interesting is they also have an 85-inch side based on this leak. So you got the 85-inch size competing directly against the Bravia 9 Mark II. So I guess some subtle improvements. So now what was the flagship 85-inch last year has been now replaced with a better flagship called the Bravia 10, assuming this is true. So this gets like, how much better can it be? That's what I'm
Yeah.
curious to see. Like, what is that additional feature? Because I have the Bravia 9 and it's phenomenal. I mean, there are one or two points that could be better, better specular highlights,
Yep.
slight blooming here and there. So maybe they address that with more dimming zones. And then you have the weirdest part, the Bravia 9 Part 2 or Mark II is a mix of WOLED on the smaller sizes, right? 55 to 77. I mean, if this is their flagship OLED, this would arguably be the not MLA, because MLA doesn't, so already it's wrong. MLA doesn't exist. It
Yeah.
would be the RGB OLED, right? Tandem OLED. So,
Yeah.
but it would still be WOLED. But if it's wrong, it could be QD OLED. So that's another thing you have to consider.
Yep.
If you're wrong with the MLA, you might also be wrong with QD OLED. Maybe it would be QD OLED in those three sizes, but then bumping, like, why would the 77 compete with the 75-inch within 2 inches? So this is why it's kind of like, man,
Yeah. So
this,
and I see
I don't
this.
know.
Well, and the sub menu delineates OLED from mini LED. The problem is I can't see them releasing, for instance, a Bravia 8 Mark II, and then
hmm
having a mini LED version of it on two sizes, and then having four OLED versions of it. Why would they name them the same thing? But so quickly, let's just forget about the naming right now. Let's
hmm
go to the bottom FOMO with the Bravia 2. So we're imagining this is we're imagining this is the Bravia 3
Brian,
successor.
it's 60 hertz.
But
I'm gonna
I
have
know, I know,
viewers
I know,
throwing things at me.
I know. But like, I want to go from top to bottom to top. So I imagine that's the Bravia 3 successor, which is really their best-selling TV, surprisingly enough. I don't know why
Yeah.
they would name it a Bravia 2.
It's not
Um,
even an XR. It's an S20M2. It
yeah,
doesn't
well, I
even
mean,
have the decency to have an XR processor.
yeah, so the Bravia 3 isn't an XR processor either. It's only 60 hertz. But they
Right.
have 43, 50, 55,
No, wait,
65.
Brian, it's a 2025 model. So yeah, I guess there is no 3. It takes over for the 3 then, huh?
Yeah, but
But
why
look,
would
it
you
says Bravia 2 Mark II. There was
why
no
would
Bravia 2 Mark 1 last. So this is the kind of inaccuracy and
that's what
lack of research that
that's
bothers
what
me.
I mean. So you imagine like you're like, so what was your TV last year? Or our last one was a 3. I'm going 2. We're counting it down. We're gonna do Bravia
Right.
0.
It'll be the Mark
So
II.
yeah, so I mean, so let's just say this is correct.
Okay.
The Bravia 3 is their 60 hertz. It is a big seller. That's the one you see. It's been
Mm-hmm.
the 8 over the years, the 80K, not the 80K, I'm sorry. It was the one
Mm-hmm.
that kind of lacked local dimming over the years. It's very popular.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
it's very hard for that TV to compete with the prices of what we're seeing from both TCL and Hisense.
Mm-hmm.
Samsung is in the same boat where they really can't lower that would be a crystal series for them, and
That
even
is a
that
Crystal
is
Series competitor.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so even that you're bumping into the things like the TCL QM6 and what you're gonna see from Hisense.
Right.
The Bravia 6 too, I'm guessing is the X90L successor.
I think so too. Yeah.
So, so here we are looking I was hoping we are gonna have a Bravia 5 FOMO because you got in trouble for saying Bravia 5 last
I
year.
know. I bet here we
So
are. You know, the Chinese was inspired by my own personal request, so let's
so
just
the
call it the Bravia FOMO.
yeah, so what we know about the, X90L, all of us know TV, not a lot of zones, XR, cognitive processor, full array
Hmm.
local dimming, very popular TV, but again, very tough competition from what you see again from the QM6K with, mini LED and the HVA panel, excellent viewing angles, excellent local dimming. So, what are your thoughts about the Q XR60 or the Bravia 6 FOMO? What are your we go from
Okay,
55 all the way to 85.
so knowing Sony and the direction they've been going the last 3 years, there's no way they're putting out 7 models.
No.
I believe, this is my personal opinion, Bravia 9 rolls over. There is no Mark II.
Yep.
Bravia 8 rolls over. The 7, there will be a Mark II because they have to address the HVA problem. I don't. I think the 5 and 6 will merge into an X90L successor. So you have
Yep.
one, two. You have two for 2025,
So yours has a
two that
Bravia
rolls
5 on it.
over.
My old one has a Bravia. I have the old piece of paper.
Yeah, the
I have
old
the
one
new
doesn't
one.
have a 5. Yeah, the new one does. But 5 and 6 are going to be, same model in the USA. It
Yep.
is the X90L. So I have the 2025 X90L successor as the Bravia 6.
Yep.
The Bravia 7 will have a Mark II, I believe. The Bravia 8, no change. It'll all be OLED. Bravia 9, no change. They're going to sell the rest of it. But you will have a Bravia 10. So I would comment on a Bravia 10, the Bravia 7 with some subtle improvements, and then the X90L successor, which should be their big volume value leader for the rest of us.
So are we thinking then, like you said earlier, the Bravia 9 isn't a Mark II LED, it's gonna be a probably RGB tandem or quantum dot
Oh,
OLED? What do you
well,
think?
that you're talking about that Bravia 10?
No, the Bravia 10, I'm hoping is an RGB mini LED.
Yeah, we have no idea
You have no
because
idea. That's more interesting.
this leak is completely wrong. It
Yeah, yeah.
says
So
MLA, so it could be QD OLED. So those of you who are hoping and then had that dream dashed, now that we know that MLA doesn't exist,
yeah,
we
it's
can say,
totally wrong.
well, this leak, they should have known. I mean, if you're going to get a leak, why did you put MLA? So I think it's a 50-50 chance it goes either way. So I think QD OLED's back on the table, in my opinion.
So if we go back up, let's start off with the Bravia 10. We have only two sizes, 85 and 98. So are we thinking or hoping that's going to be an RGB mini LED?
Mini LED, well, let's go to the next leak. Thank you. High Def News. More Sony rumblings from China. Did you get that up? There you go.
Mm,
More Sony rumblings from China. If Bravia 10 really exists this year, then we think it is more likely to be Sony's own RGB mini LED. And when they say Sony's own, that means they're getting a more stripped down version of the RGB mini LED so that Sony could go in there and get more processing in, right? Color management. And it should not be available until the second half of the year at the earliest, which is exactly the same
okay.
timetable for Hisense and Samsung. So it's coming out about the same time those guys have claimed to be releasing their version of this technology. Perfect. I mean, and again, this is elite, guys. Let's not get in
So
line, get excited.
so
But
my
I'm
issue,
excited
yeah,
just talking about this.
yeah. So I mean, to me, if that's them doing that, that's amazing. The thing I think is a little hard is that Hisense is only releasing one size of that TV. It's the 116 UX ULED.
Yes.
And Samsung's version is still ULED. We saw that in the spec. So it's the same
And it's
technology.
mhm.
Theirs is, I believe, 98. They may have an 85. Right now, it's 8K.
They're releasing a 98 first, is my understanding. The 85 will come next year, but Samsung's free to change that. But at CES, I remember one of the reps who kind of felt that it would be the 98 first in 4K,
Yeah.
and then smaller sizes the following year, because this is a very new technology. And
Yeah.
Hisense doesn't have anything smaller than that 116 they showed off. And
That's what I
that's the one
mean.
that they confirmed, right? So
So,
really,
and then
Sony has it all to itself if it can get the 85-inch out.
that's why I don't believe it. I just don't see I don't see if it's like LG and micro lens array, I highly doubt they're
Oh,
like,
oh,
"Hey,
you
you know
know what,
what?
Brian? You're
We'll hang
right.
back."
It's possible that it's 98-inch RGB mini LED. It's possible that it's not an 85-inch and
Yeah,
only the 98. And that could be the TV every custom installer has been waiting for. Because I
could be.
remember last year at M-Wave, they said, hey, FOMO, you got contacts at Sony. Ask them when the heck is this flagship
Yeah,
98-inch coming? We
yeah,
have people with 20 grand in their pocket. They
yeah,
don't want to get a projector. They don't want to get the JVC. They want a nice TV and they got to
yeah.
get a TCL.
Well, and yeah,
And, I
yeah,
mean, they're happy to
because
save the money, but they're not happy that it's only a TCL.
and because Sony was with the X92 and the X90L being their largest TVs, people had a hard time wanting to buy their lowest TV at their highest size. So
Yeah,
they were like,
it
"Look, the Bravia 9, the first thing we heard is please make it larger." They and look, I know Sony gets a lot for the Sony tax thing. I don't find their prices to be crazy. I just don't. So I mean, I think they seem that way. Real quick, let's talk about the Sony tax FOMO.
mhm.
Their prices seem high simply, and we heard this last year with the Bravia 9, which was insane because the Bravia 9 at 65 was more pricey. The 85 was cheaper than the G4 at 83.
I think the issue definitely is scaling that price. So at 85 inches, I think it's acceptable because
It was
it's hard
4,000.
to find a high quality TV at that size without all the issues of a large TV. We're talking about vertical banding, all of that.
Yeah.
And our good friend in India, remember how Sean always has to replace his TVs
His
every year?
Samsung AK he actually bought a Bravia
And,
9 and
and,
solved it.
and then he says,
Yeah.
wow, first time, no
Yeah,
DSE.
he had
He's become a convert. So if Sony can
Sean,
continue
yeah,
that, that is what you're paying for, is that
yes, yes,
quality.
yeah, Sean had, I think, 3 of the Samsung flagship AK Neo QLED
Every
mini
year.
LEDs,
And
and
every
he
year
takes
he
them back.
replaced it.
He
Yeah.
finally broke down and said, "Look, can we get a Bravia 9?" So I don't think it's gonna be an RGB LED, mini LED, because I can't see Hisense saying, "Hey, you know what? Release this before we do." I mean, I can't see them
Well,
doing
okay,
that.
actually, it works both ways. This is what I see. Hisense knows it cannot sell a $10,000 85-inch TV. So what's the point of it
A hard time
trying
selling the
to?
UX at
Yeah.
85 inch.
So why not sell the panel to Sony and make money? And then once people are used to this RGB mini LED and they
They'll
want it
sell it
at a lower
cheaper.
price, give it 2 years, scale up, then they can sell it cheap.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's the
Or
case.
Sony's like, hey, here's a little bit of something, something, give us a 1 year
Yeah.
exclusive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they
Yeah.
did. If WHVA is out this year, that's exactly what they did with TCL. Why isn't
Yeah.
TCL sticking the WHVA on the QM8K? Because Sony
Yeah.
says, give me a little exclusive. And that's the same thing with acoustic glass.
Yeah.
LG has that technology.
Yep.
Sony goes, no, no, give us 2 years with acoustic glass. And well, guess what? LG has something similar now.
Well, it makes me
So
wonder too
it's the
if
same
TC
technology.
It makes you wonder if that's why TCL is so secretive with the X11K. They're
Yes, they
like, "Yeah,
haven't confirmed specs.
it's got a
Yeah.
little something in it." So okay, so getting back down to the Bravia 9 FOMO, you and I both believed that it's gonna be a carryover, much like the Z9K Master Series had been, the Z9D, Z9G. They all had 2-year cycles. We thought that that would carry over, and then we'd see a new OLED because the
Hmm.
A95L, I think, is 3 years old. Is it 3 years old now? It's gonna be 3 years.
This would be the third year. Yeah.
It's won the shootout. So, now back to that. So, we both agree that Bravia 9 is carrying over
Yes.
because a Bravia 9 Mark II would make sense if it was an A95L Mark III because that would have
And
been a 3rd gen QD OLED.
and let's talk about branding 101. If you're introducing an A95L successor, that's going to be a Bravia something. Why would you dilute that impact of a brand new model by calling it the same name that you used last year
Yeah,
on a different TV? So by
yeah,
calling it Bravia 9, you've completely diluted the impact of the successor to the A95L. You have to give it its own space.
of
So
course.
that's another thing that leak doesn't make sense. That A95L successor, whatever technology, I don't care, but that flagship OLED needs to be called a Bravia 11, Bravia 10. Give
Yes,
it a
yeah, yeah,
name that it has its
yeah.
rights. So to mix it up with a Bravia 9 Mark II, like, wait, no, that it's branding 101. That does not make sense at all.
And that's why going back quickly to the Bravia 9, again, as I said, when we had some speculation with the shootout with the A95L maybe being a 3rd gen panel, we thought maybe they should have delineated that and said, A95L2. We talked about that last year. That made sense because it would have been a new panel. The only way I see the Bravia 9 doing that is if they have the WVH what I'm saying? They have that new panel, the WHVA panel. If they did that, I can see them saying Bravia 9 Max. But I don't think their own people, their own consumers would be very happy considering the Bravia 9 is still on the market, which wasn't a
Yeah,
huge seller. It's a very popular TV. And for us, FOMO, I think a lot of people, we say about how popular TVs are, doesn't mean they're big sellers. The Bravia 3 is their best-selling TV, not the Bravia 9. So, I
right.
mean, what they make money on, the Bravia 7, things like that. So I can't see them doing that. So we think the Bravia 9 is gonna carry over. There's no reason to have a second one. Now
Nope.
let's talk about the OLED FOMO. Do you
The
think,
the mysterious OLED that
the
could be
mysterious OLED,
either RGB or QD OLED,
so
50-50.
why I think, and I hope, I'd love for it to be QD OLED.
Hmm.
Why I think it's not going to be one is, one, they need to release an 83-inch QD OLED. Or an 83-inch
True,
OLED, period. Last
true.
year's Bravia 8 did not have an 83-inch. The last 83-inch was this one behind me, the A80L. The one before that was the A90J. So they really need an 83-inch. If they're not doing another Bravia 8, which I don't think they're gonna do because they have a whole new design last year, why would they do that again? And the competition for the Bravia 8 is the C series, which is incrementally better every year. So I think Bravia 8 is good where it is, FOMO.
Yep.
Um, but I would think you need to do an 83-inch new OLED, and that would only be an RGB tandem OLED because there is no 83-inch QD OLED. What are your
So it
thoughts about
goes
that?
to what Samsung is doing. They mixed it. Would Sony do a mix?
You see them doing that? They would do. I think they think that's too cluttered for them. I don't think they would
I
want to do
I
that.
I agree with you. It's resource intensive to
Yes.
split your resources
Yeah.
to tool and calibrate two different TVs. So yeah, you know what? I if they release an 83-inch this year, that would be the case. You're right. It would have to be all RGB, uh, ti- prime,
Primary
primary
RGB layer cake,
RGB
baby.
tandem.
Yeah.
These names, and
Yeah.
and this is not LG's fault. It's LG Display is not good at giving names because their job is to sell displays
Yeah.
to
And
other
they're doing it. Yeah.
businesses. And
Yep.
LG Electronics has given up giving it a name. They just call
Yep.
it Ultra Booster
Yep.
Max, whatever. Brightness Booster Ultra. So, BBL, brightness,
Yeah.
BBU,
No,
Boo Boo.
no,
Yeah.
I
So the
don't
Boo
think
Boo
it.
panel.
Yeah, so I don't think the 83-inch is necessary for them, but considering they haven't had one in how many years? Again, the A80L, it's okay for it to carry over 1 year FOMO because it had the heat sink and all those things that made it slightly better, but I'll tell you, the A80L, I love my TV, it's a lot darker than the Bravia 8, right? And so especially it's a Dolby Vision implementation. they can't go one more year with that. And I think they like size. So I'm guessing the RGB tandem OLED primary OLED is going to be what they're going to do. Which I would love to see them go back to QD OLED, but I think we've seen Panasonic go that way as well. But I'm only picking them to do that because I think they want an 83 inch. They need to have one. Otherwise,
Yeah,
you're just giving LG sales.
yep, yep.
This
No,
is the only
I
game in town.
think I think so too. I think the 83 inch is essential. People are going bigger. 83 is the new
Yeah.
65 inch in many consumer minds now, because affordability has dropped greatly in terms of what you could buy with $2,000 or $3,000 today. Much larger sizes. I mean, an 83 inch a few years ago was like what, $7,000 for an OLED that size. Now it's going to start dropping under five, so I think that's very reasonable.
Okay, so we're guessing that we're both going to see an RGB tandem OLED. Now, where are you with the Bravia 7? It's dangerous for that TV to carry over because the
It cannot.
competition
It
is
cannot
in it.
carry over. It has to be the Bravia 7 as it is has to be a 2024 model. If you're going to have a price in that space, it has to be replaced with an HVA panel. There's just no way around it. That makes such a huge difference. And if you don't have it, you're not going to sell any.
Now, FOMO,
Because
don't you
off
have
angle, it's a weakness.
so this is the conundrum that Sony's gonna find themselves in. And this is not speculation, this is a fact. If the Bravia 7 improves too much, it's gonna surpass the Bravia 9. So they have to be careful of an HVA panel having better local dimming than the Bravia 9. It can't be brighter. The Bravia 9 is not the brightest mini LED in the world. You're gonna see brighter TVs
Well,
from
well, Brian, look at it this way. The QM6K has surpassed the QM7 from last year. Didn't
it.
stop TCL from doing that.
Well, but I think TCL's a little full of it. I think they're gonna drop a QM8 at the end of the year. That's gonna be
Right.
117.
Well, I mean, but the QM7 is dead in the water. Last
Yeah,
year's QM7. I
yeah,
mean, that's
absolutely. Because the
for that price,
QM7K.
it's a dead TV. Like, I cannot imagine the only person I'd recommend the QM7 on angle, bright sports, news, that's it.
Yeah,
But if you're
yeah,
watching movies, Netflix, cinema, QM6K is such a better experience and better settings, just everything about it's
yeah.
better.
But can
And
you but
it's
can
same price if you wait another month or two.
but can you see so, like, you've compared the Bravia 7, the Bravia 9. At 65 inches, you thought they were rather close.
Oh, yeah.
I disagree because at 85, I think they're completely different animals. I'll go on my I'll die on that sword.
I haven't
Um,
seen the 85 inch, so
yeah,
I'll take your word for
and
it.
I have the 75-inch Bravia 7. I love it. I do feel the Bravia 9 is a good deal better, but the if I do recommend a new Bravia 7 and it's got better local dimming and it's brighter, that brightness is gonna bump into the Bravia 9, and
I
there's a
can guarantee,
redundancy there.
okay. So I can guarantee you that because it's so bright, it's got blooming issues. Even doubling the dimming zones will not fix it. And the Bravia 9 pulled down the brightness a touch to have better blooming control.
Yeah, they did the
And so the Bravia
X95
7
too.
cannot get, I mean, so there's always that compromise. So you get the Bravia 7 if you want the brightness, but the blooming is just unacceptable.
But that's why I'm saying
If
if you have a new
so,
version,
so
FOMO, where's the wiggle room?
but even the new version will still have blooming. That's what I'm saying. So it'll still be bright, but the Bravia 9 has the sophistication, the nuanced, right?
Of course.
It will be a better, if blooming is important to you. If you're all about brightness, they'll be the same.
Yeah.
Except specular highlights on the 7 will be better unless it's in that shadow area where you'll see the blooming. And the Bravia 9 does not have that. It is, unless I put my exposure a little bit higher, then you see it. Like when I did comparison with the QM6K, hyper exposed it. And that's when you saw a little bit more blooming than the
Yeah.
QM6K. But normally you would not notice that in normal
And
exposure, your
not in
eyesight.
this yeah, and I had to do that with my exposure as well to show off angle, but you have to be dead center.
Hmm.
But my challenge is what they're doing is by carrying over maybe the Bravia 9, they've not given the Bravia 9 doesn't have enough headroom to be leagues above the Bravia 7. They're gonna have a hard time bumping into each other. Um, so
Yeah.
so we think we're looking at a definite Bravia 10 of some kind, which will be a standalone, hopefully RGB mini LED.
Well, Brian, that they did that 2 years ago with the X95L and the X93L. X93L is the carryover of the X95K,
Yep.
remember? Slightly better,
Yes.
but the
Yeah.
X95L was a bit better, but they were bumping into each other.
They
Which
did.
which one did you end up recommending?
So here's the funny thing is they did in the same way, FOMO, because they were the same year. The X93 looked brighter for the same reason the Bravia 7 looks brighter. The
There
local
you
dim was
go.
more aggressive. So
Hmm.
some people saw that comparison and said, "Oh, wait a second, I like the X93L better because it looked brighter in certain shots." Though I think the local dimming was better on the X93L than maybe the Bravia 7. Only 'cause I think the Bravia 7, and this is Sony's signature, shadow detail is so much more important to them than blooming. It's not
Yeah.
blooming because the TV is garbage. It's blooming because they will keep the detail when everyone else will just crush it. The QM6K will crush a little bit of it. Okay, so we think we're going to see right now a Bravia 10 of some kind.
Hmm.
Definitely going to see a OLED, not called the Bravia 9 Mark II. We're going to see a Bravia 7, is what you're guessing. That's three. And without a doubt, the last one I want to talk about is this Bravia 6, Bravia 5 hybrid. Now,
The
this one's going to
successor to the X90L.
be the very popular X90J, X90K, X90L. Why I love the X90L FOMO and X90J and K is whenever we talked about this when I first reviewed the X90J 3 years ago. You said, I don't want to review it. No one's going to buy it, right? Six
Hmm.
months later, when the price goes down, everyone goes, I think I am going to check that one out.
Yep.
But the competition on a full array local dimming LED right now is going to be monstrous, considering that Hisense and TCL both are rocking mini LEDs top to bottom. So what do you think other than XR Clear? Now I don't know if they're going to retool the processor every year. And look, Sony still head and shoulders above just about everybody with processing. You have the Alpha 11 from LG only
Okay,
on one
so
model.
the X90L has a huge problem, or rather, the X90L successor.
Okay.
It's bumping up against the QM6K.
Well, both of them
The
actually, the QM6K and the
QM6K
QM7.
and the QM7K have this new 23-bit mini LED.
Yeah,
X90L does not have mini LED anything.
yeah.
It only has a limited number of dimming zones. So it's coming to a gunfight with a knife. And I know Sony software is good, but
Untouchables.
as we
We'll talk
saw,
about
TCL's software has improved drastically.
yeah.
It is no longer an advantage, enough of an advantage to say your software is better when your competition software is only within 2% of yours and they have hardware specs to back it up.
Yeah.
So that Bravia 5 or 6, it needs, I mean, I don't know what's going to do. More dimming zones, right? It cannot come there with just 80 dimming zones like it did in the past, right? It's
No.
this
Well,
successor really has to nail it because it'll be more expensive than QM6K. It'll be the same price as the QM7K.
and
That's
that's without
tough.
Hisense and their U7Q or
U7Q. Mm-hmm.
U8Q, which we
Yep.
already
Yep.
know the U8Q is looking at like 5,000 nits. So I mean, you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about the TVs in this mid tier are brighter than the flagships from other manufacturers. I think it's going
Well,
to be tough
that's their
sledding.
flagships. Yeah, they treat it like their flagships.
Now, do
Absolutely.
we now do we have any news on these leaks about a new SoC or HDMI 2.1 being more than two, or is it all still same chip?
So if you notice with Sony, once it's called an XR something, they call it XR for a few generations, but they
Yep.
might tune it, just like the X93L has a better XR version than the X95K, and the X or the Bravia 7 has a better XR version than the X95L, even
Yeah,
though
they
hardware
tweak them.
specs are the same,
Yep.
right? Or the Bravia 8 versus the A80L, all XR cognitive processors. So absolutely, but it'll be subtle. Maybe they have the option to sharpen, unsharpen, very subtle things that only enthusiasts care about.
Yep.
Because the non-enthusiast, oh, it looks the same to me for a
Well,
non-enthusiast. So I
it's
think,
their up conversion. But what about
eh,
their chip for HDMI? We talked about that. Has there been some
mm,
leaks that they're going to have four HDMI 2.1, or are they going to? What are we hearing from any of them? I know some of the other manufacturers are looking
only
for.
Hisense has confirmed they will have four HDMI 2.1 gaming. No one else outside of
LG and Samsung
LG and Samsung.
who make the
So,
routes.
so no leaks from Sony or anyone. And I would be surprised if Sony adopted the new MediaTek
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
for, yeah. But again, hey, if they release late enough the year, maybe they do.
Yeah.
Maybe they do.
So, all
But
right.
TCL did not.
So I'm
So,
gonna guess that no, that's not gonna happen. So FOMO, if we guess what we're guessing, are you excited?
I'm so excited about the Bravia 10 at the 98
Yep.
inch size if it's RGB main LED. I'm even more excited if it could come in an 85 inch because that
Yeah.
makes it accessible both in price and size. I'm super excited about the one TV that I will fit in my room, which would be the new OLED, whatever it ends up being, the QD OLED
Yeah.
successor to the A95L or a primary RGB tandem successor to it. I think that one excites me the most because that's what will win the shootout, right? That's the TV that they're going to put up against the best and will be reference monitor quality with no compromise to the shadow detail, with
Yeah.
ultimate color luminance and peak specular highlights. So we'll definitely compare that to my reference right now, the S95D. Like, can it beat last year's QD OLED? That'll be
Yeah.
exciting to see.
Yeah. I mean, I'm super excited. I can't see Sony um judging by this leak. It's very generic, and I can't see
Well,
them
and
doing
wrong.
it. And
Generic
wrong.
and wrong.
Yeah. So I can't.
W OLED MLA. Okay, you just lost credibility with me.
So I can't see them do that. But FOMO, we've covered everything from speculation, kind of where we think they should go. We'll know very soon, but obviously we won't be able to really discuss it beyond this video, which is why I want to do this video now before we have to say that we don't know. But I'm excited. So far, this TV year is going to be amazing. But I'm pulling for them. I like that they come out later in the year because it really spaces out our content. Which is so funny
Yep.
though. If you look at our channel, any particular time of the right now, you think we're TCL lovers because that's the only TV out. So Sony really does get the limelight completely when they release because they're the only game in town at that point. And quickly, film about their pricing. Lastly, everyone will say, "Hey, they released at this price; it's expensive." But everyone else has had a price drop by the time they drop. By the time Sony drops their TVs, LG and Samsung have already dropped one or two times. That's an interesting thing about coming out late. Anything that you think they can fix with that, or is that just part of the with coming in late? You got to
They
make money.
they they need to make money. I as consumers, we want the cheapest TV with the most value. That's why TCL and Hisense exists. But
Yeah.
again, as a reminder, they're vertically integrated. They are mostly subsidized by a state government that's intent on taking over the panel industry.
Yep.
So they have a lot of advantages that Sony does not have. And it's there to appeal to the price conscious. And I'm completely fine with that. But then those with the money, I say spend that money on something like a Sony or an LG or a Samsung so that in 5 years I still have three other brands to talk about.
Yeah.
Because I don't,
Yeah.
yes, hey, Hisense and TCL, who's going to win this year? What about
Yeah.
Samsung?
It's
Oh,
that's what
they only
that's
make
what.
refrigerators now.
Yeah. Smart refrigerators. All
Smart
right, guys.
refrigerators and paintings. That's it.
Well, it'll be very fun. But that's me and FOMO talking about Sony. You guys will know very soon what's happening, but I thought it would be a fun video. Guys, thanks for joining us. I'm Brian from Brian's Tech Therapy. This is Stop the FOMO. Love you guys. Take care.
Bye.
It's bad.